Are your life drawings a little lifeless? Are your figure drawings akin to the shape of a trash bag full of jack-o'-lanterns? Then this video is for you. But before we get started, this video is sponsored by my book. That's right, I'm a writer. I'm thrilled to present to you my labor of love over the past 9 months. My first crack at a masterpiece, how to write this book. It's weird, it's wonderful, it's not like any other book that's ever been written. In this book, you'll travel with me through burnout, creativity, finding your thing, and rediscovering the childhood spark. This book is an Easter egg hunt of irreverence, and on your ramble you'll find memes, parables, weird bird drawings, and even brand new conspiracies to conspire about. I think this is my favorite book I've ever read. It feels like the author wrote it just for me. I hope you will enjoy it too, and if you do, please let me know. Why are these words censored? What does this secret code mean? Who is Ferdinand the Bland? And what is up with these page numbers? You can find a link to my book in the description, and thanks in advance for reading How to Write This Book. So this video is all about gesture. Previously in our life drawing series, we went through stick figures and block people. And these first figure drawing videos were all about structure. The starting point for believable drawings is suggesting that they occupy space. In other words, that they are 3D forms. If this awareness of 3D space isn't established through practice, then your drawings will always feel a little bit disconnected. Form relates your lines to each other in space. Now, of course, the magic of drawing is it is just lines and angles. So if you're uncertain of how to draw something, you can just defer to what your eyes see. But learning to see things in terms of their form gives us a new level of familiarity with the stuff that we're drawing. I like to use art as a practice for familiarity. If I'm gonna draw 10,000 torsos anyways, then I would like to come out of that knowing torsos in some way. And surprisingly, it's really easy to do something inattentively 10,000 times and not really get much out of it. So, one nice way to accomplish this is to find a big picture thing to notice while practicing, and to notice it till it's second nature, totally effortless. Then you can build upon your second nature understanding instead of repeating the same practice for a decade and not really getting anywhere. So, thinking in terms of form has been the central point of my first life drawing lessons. So next, with gesture, we're not going to do away with form, but we're going to add in the practice of gesture to our drawing. So if you have followed my videos, you've drawn a number of blocky persons. And the problem that is immediately obvious with this type of life drawing is the stiffness. It doesn't have enough life to it. Here's a dumb joke. If you have a life drawing that doesn't have any life, can you call it a life drawing? By drawing a figure as blocks in space, pointing different directions, you've accurately placed an object in space. Great job. But by aiming for this accuracy, you've made a trade-off. You've sacrificed some of the life of the piece. This is a paradox in art, the struggle between accuracy and energy, how to get life in your forms. With abstract art, since you've done away with the problem of accuracy, you can focus on maximizing the energy of your piece through confidence. You can even explore how to alter the energy in different areas of your artwork. This is marvelous stuff to get skillful in. But as representational artists, you have a more complicated job. You must manage your need for accuracy enough that there is still room for life in the piece. Gesture is the traditional way to solve this problem. I like to think of gesture as a glue that binds together structure and energy into a form. It's basically a confidently drawn curve that moves along the major axis of a form. Gestures also often perform a double duty of relating the minor forms together into a connected whole. Structure can do this too. You can make a big simplified form and tie them together by aligning their landmarks together accurately. But gestures with their speed are really well suited to flowing forms together and making them cohere. So with a gesture line, you have a confident organic curve that tracks the long lines of a volume, naturally simplifies the forms, and encourages smaller forms to flow off the bigger ones by echoing the confident curves of the larger gesture. So you get coherence and energy out of a gestural line. Talk about efficient. So that is plenty about my philosophy of gesture or whatever. Now let's get to the practicals of the exercise that you see before you. So the references you see here on screen are from Pixabay. I'm using these because I know it's legal for me to put the images up on the video, but for my own practice, I usually either use Pinterest and I search poses, or I use Croquis Cafe, which is an online life drawing group. It is definitely beneficial to draw figures naked if you don't have any moral qualms with that. It's easier to see the forms when there isn't clothing in the way. But it's perfectly fine to draw clothed figures too. You should be able to see the basic forms of the human body underneath the clothes, and that is a skill in its own right. I would suggest that as you're drawing, you try to draw as lightly as possible. That's a bad habit of mine, is to draw too heavily. And one of the benefits of getting it into second nature to draw lightly is it's much easier to add forms on top of your forms afterwards without it just looking like a big royal mess. I usually start with the head, and if the head is looking forward, then I draw as an egg shape. If it's looking kind of sideways, I'll use a sailboat sail for the shape. And that is something I learned from Steve Houston. You can draw a horizontal line about a third of the way down the head, and that is the brow ridge, the eyebrow ridge. And you can kind of position that lower if the head is looking down. You can position it higher if the head is looking up. And then I like to draw a vertical line for the center line. So if the head is turned a little bit one way, you can move that vertical line a little bit, and you have a real simple way of expressing which way the head is pointing. And then if you want, also you can add the shadow of the nose, which is halfway between the brow line and the chin. After the head, I like to draw the line of action. This is the biggest, simplest gesture of the whole pose. The gesture of gestures, which every other gesture gestures itself off of. Or in English, you sum up the whole movement of a pose with a single line. Now, even that can sound very abstract. How does a motionless pose move? Well, think of the motion of a gesture line like how your eye moves along the form. If Sonic the Hedgehog was doing a single, smooth, unbroken run down the curves of this 3D form, what would be his path of least resistance? Okay, that's not the best analogy, but that's the best I can come up with right now. Often your line of action starts at the nape of the neck, and you make the line of action go all the way down to foot level. And sometimes extended arms can begin the line of action. Extended arms or legs can carry a big, graceful arc, which makes the gesture more than just the curve of the back extending to the earth. And that's a good thing to point out. A lot of times your gesture line will kind of follow the curve of the back. It'll either follow the spine, or if the back is turned in a certain way, it might follow the line where the back meets the background. But the back is a really useful landmark for identifying maybe what that line of action is doing. After this, I mark the hip angle, which is at the middle of the line of action, and then the shoulder angle, leaving room for the neck. I make these a little bit curvy, like they're describing the top or bottom of a cylinder. And this is more or less taken from Michael Hampton's style of figure drawing. Then we can connect the hips and the shoulders together to make a torso shape. An important thing to remember here is every torso shape you want to draw with a pinch side and a stretch side. So on the pinch side, I suggest you make that angular, and then on the stretch side, you want that to be swoopy. You want to use one single line for that whole stretch side. So at the end, you end up with kind of a funny shaped cylinder or box. And the way I draw this torso shape is heavily inspired by Ethan Becker. Now you can draw a horizontal line tracking the chest or the upper back, and you can wrap it around to kind of show the form of a cylinder. You could make your torso boxy as well, but I like cylinders because these are going to carry the gesture easier than angular shapes. Then for the arms and legs, you use swoopy cylinders, just like in my Box People video. You can also use a single swoopy for the leg or the arm if it's not too bent, and that makes for a really gestural looking limb. One trick for the hands and feet, it can be helpful to place those first before connecting them to the torso with limbs. Sometimes this makes it easier for me to keep the legs from being too short, and it also gives me a good chance to relate the 2 feet to each other, the 2 hands to each other. So rather than just drawing legs and praying that the feet end up in the right spots, I've got a little bit of accuracy set in place. When the arms and legs of the figure are really bent, you use 2 cylinders, but you can still make those cylinders gestural. We don't want straight cylinders for the limbs, we want a little bit of swoop in those, just like everywhere else. Bent arms and legs have a real spring-like energy. It's like you're smushing the single gesture line down, and then it turns into a spring, and all that energy could pop up at any minute. And then finally, the hands and feet that I'm drawing are often triangles or squares. It's nice to keep those as simple and form-like as possible. Drawing references in this way will really help you to get a sense of how the whole body fits together and how to start to make your drawings lifelike, full of energy. I like this practice too because we're not doing away with all that great 3D form practice that you've been doing. We're remembering that this figure still fits in space. And as always, I think it's wonderful to take this way of drawing and then try to make up your own poses without a reference. Keep it as casual as possible, glide right past any failed attempts. This stuff isn't easy, but there's a real fun freedom to inventing real complex characters right out of your own amazing head. Thank you all for watching this gesture video. I know it's been a while since I posted. I've been in the thick of writing for a while now, but it's great to be back in the YouTube world, and I expect I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos soon. Again, please buy my weird, wonderful book. It's a real trip. I think you'll like it. You can find a link for it in the description. And have a great day, everyone.